name's Andrew. I'm with Advanced School Driving, and we're going to go over the walk-around test. We're going to start out at the beginning of the truck. So you can see up here, we got the yellow lights on the top, our marker lights. We want to make sure that they're not cracked, broken, and they're in good condition. We move down, we're going to check the windshield, make sure that's also in good condition. Coming down to the headlights, we're going to check the headlights, make sure they're not cracked, broken, in good condition. Same thing with our indicator lights here. We're going to check the bumper. We want to make sure it's level with the ground. If it's not, it could be a broken leaf spring, a flat tire, or a shift of load. We're going to check underneath the truck as well for any fluids. That could be coolant, that could be oil, or that could be power steering fluid. I'm going to go ahead and pop open the hood now. Undoing these rubber straps, I'll get the one on the other side. Alright, we're going to start on the passenger side of the engine bay here. Starting from the top, we're going to check the coolant level when the engine is cold. Take off the cap, you can look inside, put the cap back on. We're going to check all of our hoses, make sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. Checking all of our clamps and make sure they're nice and tight. Coming down here to our alternator belt. Want to make sure it has no more than 3/4 of an inch play. Check our alternator, make sure the bolts are nice and tight, the connections, there's no loose connections or anything like that. Moving down to our water pump, we want to make sure that it's not leaking, all the bolts are nice and tight. Checking our oil, right here is going to be our dipstick. We're going to pull it out, wipe it off, put it back in, pull it out. If it needs to add any oil, we will do so right here. Moving back, here's our exhaust system here. Want to make sure that there's no soot. If there is soot, that could indicate that we have an exhaust leak somewhere. Coming down to our frame, we want to make sure there's no illegal holes, no illegal welds, or no illegal cuts. It's in good condition. Checking our spring mounts. We're checking all our bolts, make sure they're nice and tight. That's in good condition. We want to check our leaf springs. This is the front. We don't want any damage in the front. We're going to check our shackle here. Make sure it's also in good condition, not cracked, broken. We're going to check our U-bolt here. Want to make sure it's not cracked, broken, in good condition. And the bolts on the bottom, they're nice and tight. Moving to our shock absorber. We're going to check this, make sure the bolt's nice and tight. There's no hydraulic leak down here in the middle. Everything looks like it's in good condition. Moving to our brake assembly. We're going to check our brake line, make sure there's no abrasions, bubbles, cuts. It's in good condition. Check our chamber. We're going to check our clamp. Make sure the clamp is nice and tight. It's in good condition. We're going to check the push rod and the slack adjuster. We want to make sure it's at a 90-degree angle. And when pulled out, that it is no more than 1 inch. We're going to check our inside lining and drum. We want to make sure there's no bluing, glazing, and it's in good condition. Moving out to our tire assembly, we want to check our ICD. That stands for inflation, condition, and depth. We want to check the inflation. We can check that with a commercial tire gauge. It needs to be up to manufacturer specifications. We're going to check our depth. It needs to have at least 4/32 of an inch on depth. And the condition of the tire, there's going to be no nails, no rubber missing out of the tire, and it's in good condition. Also, on the front, we cannot have recaps or retreads. These have to be version tires, and they have to be in good condition. Checking our rim. Make sure there's no illegal holes, no illegal welds, no illegal cuts. It's also in good condition. Checking all of our lug nuts. Make sure there's no rust. Make sure it's not loose. Down here, these little nuts here, these are called spider nuts. Make sure those are nice and tight and in good condition. Here's our hub oil. We can check this by popping off the cap, putting our pinky on the inside of it, and pulling it out. If the oil comes up to less than the first indent of our finger, we need to add 90 weight gear oil, and we can do so right here. Okay, moving on to the other side of the truck. Alright, on the other side of the truck, we're going to start with the steering arm. We want to make sure it's not cracked or broken, it's in good condition. We want to check the joint, make sure it's lubed properly, also in good condition. We're going to check our power steering box here, make sure it's not cracked, broken, it's in good condition, and everything is working properly. We're going to check our pitman arm, make sure it's also not cracked, broken, in good condition, and here we have a castle nut and cotter pin. Want to make sure the cotter pin's in place here, and the castle nut is nice and tight. Checking our drag link, make sure it's not bent, cracked, broken, in good condition. We also have another castle nut right here. Also, we want to check that the same as we check this one up here. We're going to check our upper and lower steering knuckles, make sure they're also in good condition, not bent, cracked, or broken. Coming back here, we have our power steering pump. We want to make sure it's not leaking and it's in good condition. We're going to come up here to our air compressor, make sure it's also in good condition and everything is tight and nothing is leaking. Right here is going to be our power steering reservoir. We can pull this cap out. There's going to be another dipstick. If we need to add any power steering fluid, we would do so right here. I'm now going to indicate that this truck is gear driven. It is not belt driven. You can tell that because you don't see any belts coming from the pumps, and we have an air compressor, and that needs to be named on your test. Now for the big three, the tire assembly, the brake assembly, and the suspension assembly, I'm now going to say that I'm going to check that the same as I checked on the other side. But you have to make sure that you name everything on the other side, or else those points that you missed on the passenger side will now multiply over to the driver's side. Moving on back, we want to check our mirror. We want to make sure it's nice and firm to the door open and closes properly, the hinges are holding. Here we're going to check our battery box and make sure the